He did not hear voices. He did not see things that were not there. He slept normally. He worked normally. He spoke normally. There were no sudden changes. No dramatic breakdowns. No moment where people said something was wrong. But he was absolutely certain of one thing. Someone was watching him. Not constantly. Not in an obvious way. Just enough to make him aware of it. And that belief, slowly and quietly, began to dismantle his life. In the early 2000s, people who knew him described him the same way. Quiet. Intelligent. Reliable. He was not charismatic. He was not memorable. He was the kind of person people trusted without thinking about it. He had a steady job that paid just enough. A small apartment in a quiet area. A routine that rarely changed. He woke up at the same time every day. Took the same route to work. Bought groceries on the same evenings. Nothing about him stood out. He paid rent on time. Returned messages within a day. Showed up when expected. There was no history of mental illness. No drug use. No criminal record. Doctors had never flagged him. Employers had never warned him. Friends had never worried. If you passed him on the street, you would not remember his face. And that detail matters. Because whatever happened to him did not announce itself. It did not arrive as fear. It arrived as a thought. Quiet. Reasonable. Easy to dismiss. At first, there was nothing dramatic about it. No sudden fear. No panic. Just a feeling that arrived without explanation. It happened during ordinary moments. Waiting at a crosswalk. Standing in line at a store. Sitting on public transport. He would feel it, briefly. The sense that someone nearby was paying attention to him. Not staring. Not following. Just aware. He noticed it once and dismissed it. Everyone imagines things sometimes. A stranger's eyes linger a second too long. Someone pauses mid-conversation. The brain fills in gaps. He told himself that. And for a while, that explanation worked. Days passed. Then weeks. The feeling returned. In different places. With different people. A man across the street who stopped walking when he did. A woman on a phone call who lowered her voice when he passed. Small things. Things that meant nothing on their own. But they left an impression. He began replaying them later. Not obsessively. Just enough to wonder. Was that intentional? Was that coincidence? He noticed that the feeling never lasted long. It came and went. Like a presence at the edge of awareness. Not threatening. Just there. He still slept normally. Still went to work. Still laughed at jokes. No one noticed anything different. And that made it easier to ignore. If nothing else was changing, then nothing was wrong. But once the idea existed, it did not leave. It waited. Quietly. At some point, the moment stopped feeling isolated. Not all at once. Gradually. He started noticing similarities. The same car parked on different streets. Not following him. Just present. A man he had seen at a cafe, now standing near a bus stop weeks later. It could have been coincidence. That was always the easiest explanation. But coincidence works best when it happens once. Or twice. This felt different. The events were spaced far enough apart to seem unrelated. But close enough to be remembered. He did not write anything down. Did not collect evidence. He simply noticed. And once he started noticing, it became harder to stop. He caught himself scanning reflections. Windows. Car mirrors. Dark screens. Looking not for faces, but for confirmation. He began asking quiet questions. Why did that person stop talking? Why did that car slow down? Why did it always feel like it happened when he was present? He still did not feel afraid. Fear implies danger. This felt observational. As if someone was gathering information. And that idea changed how he moved through the world. He walked slightly faster. Chose different routes home. Not to escape. Just to test. To see if the feeling followed. Sometimes it did. Sometimes it didn't. And that inconsistency made it worse. If it were constant, it could be explained. But this felt selective. Intentional. He still did not tell anyone. There was nothing concrete to say. Only impressions. And impressions are easy to dismiss. Especially when no one else seems to notice. The changes started small. So small that even he barely noticed them. He stopped sitting near windows in public places. Not because he was afraid of what was outside. But because being visible made him uncomfortable. He chose seats facing walls. Corners. Places where he could see the room without being seen. He began leaving earlier for work. Crowds created too many variables. Too many eyes. At home, he became aware of how exposed his apartment felt. The windows were large. Uncovered. At night, he found himself glancing toward them. Not expecting to see anything. Just checking. Eventually, he closed the curtains. Then kept them closed. Not out of fear. Out of preference. Electronics started to bother him. At first, it was notifications. A vibration with no message. A screen lighting up for no clear reason. Then it was the feeling that devices were listening. Not recording. Listening. He told himself that was irrational. Phones did not work that way. But the thought still lingered. He unplugged things he did not need. A tablet. A spare speaker. Nothing essential. Just small adjustments. Friends noticed he was quieter. More distracted. When they asked if something was wrong, he said no. And he believed that was true. Nothing was wrong. He was just being careful. That was how he explained it. And for a while, that explanation felt sufficient. He began declining invitations. At first, he gave reasons. Work. Fatigue. Plans he never explained. Meeting people in public felt different now. Too many strangers. Too many unknown movements. Too many opportunities to be observed without noticing. When he did go out, he stayed near exits. He tracked reflections automatically. Glass doors. Windows. Car panels. Not looking for anyone specific. Just making sure nothing stood out. Over time, explanations became unnecessary. He stopped responding to messages altogether. Not out of anger. Out of caution. To him, communication created exposure. Information could be shared. Misunderstood. Passed along. Silence felt safer. Friends noticed the distance growing. Some assumed he was depressed. Others assumed he was busy. A few tried to confront him. Asked directly if something was wrong. He did not argue. Arguing required justification. Justification created attention. Instead, he withdrew further. To him, it wasn't personal. Anyone who didn't feel what he felt could not understand. And anyone who pushed too hard might be connected to it. Isolation did not feel lonely. It felt controlled. Predictable. For the first time in months, he felt calm. And that calm convinced him he was doing the right thing. The calm did not last. It never does. At some point, the feeling followed him home. Not physically. Mentally. He stopped sleeping through the night. Not because of nightmares. but because quiet made him alert. Every sound felt deliberate. Footsteps in the hallway. A door closing somewhere in the building. Pipes shifting in the walls. Normal apartment noises. But now they carried weight. He started keeping lights on at night. Darkness made it easier to imagine movement. Light made everything visible. Or at least, that was the idea. He began to believe his workplace was involved. Not officially. Subtly. Co-workers exchanging looks. Conversations that ended when he approached. Someone mentioning details he did not remember sharing. He replayed interactions after work. Analyzing tone. Timing. Body language. Searching for intention. Eventually, going in became unbearable. The building felt wrong. As if the walls themselves were listening. He quit without warning. No explanation. No farewell. Just stopped showing up. For a few days, the relief was immediate. No co-workers. No routine. No place where people expected him. But relief creates space. And space invites thought. The feeling did not leave. It waited. And then it adapted. He decided the problem was the location. That was the most logical explanation. Places collect patterns. People notice routines. If he removed himself from the environment, the feeling would disappear. So he moved. The new apartment was smaller. Farther from the city center. Quieter. For the first few weeks, it worked. The feeling faded. No familiar faces. No repeated routes. No recognizable surroundings. He slept better. He relaxed. And that brief relief convinced him he had been right. But slowly, the awareness returned. A neighbor who seemed to be outside too often. A car idling longer than necessary. Someone standing on a balcony across from his window. Nothing obvious. Nothing provable. He moved again. Then again. 3 times in 6 months. Each move followed the same pattern. Relief. Calm. Then recognition. As if whatever was watching him simply needed time to adjust. With every move, his world grew smaller. He unpacked less. Learned fewer names. Left fewer traces. The goal was no longer comfort. It was invisibility. And yet, the feeling persisted. Unchanged. Patient. Eventually, he reached a point where doing nothing felt worse than acting. If someone was watching him, then it meant rules existed. Surveillance required systems. Systems left traces. So he called the police. Not in panic. Calmly. He reported being followed. Being monitored. He described patterns, not accusations. Cars. Strangers. Repeated appearances. The officers listened. They took notes. They asked questions that sounded routine. Did anyone threaten you? Did anyone contact you directly? Did you recognize anyone? The answer was always no. They searched the area. Found nothing. No suspicious vehicles. No complaints from neighbors. No evidence of a crime. They told him that. Reassured him. Suggested stress. Suggested rest. And then they left. The visits happened more than once. Each time, the result was the same. Nothing to investigate. Nothing to pursue. To the officers, the case was simple. No evidence meant no threat. But to him, their inability to find anything only confirmed his fear. If it was hidden well enough, of course they would miss it. After the calls, he felt worse. More exposed. As if involving authorities had marked him. He stopped calling. And decided he would handle it alone. After the police stopped coming, people stopped hearing from him. At first, the silence felt temporary. A missed call. A message left unread. Friends assumed he needed space. Then days passed. Then weeks. His phone went straight to voicemail. Emails bounced back unanswered. The apartment he had most recently moved into was emptied quietly. No notice posted. No forwarding address. Neighbors remembered seeing him, but only vaguely. A man who kept to himself. Who avoided eye contact. Who moved at odd hours. Landlords later said rent had stopped arriving. No explanation. No complaints. Just absence. There was no report of a crime. No signs of struggle. No record of him leaving the country. He simply faded out of systems that had once tracked him. Some believe he planned it. That he chose to disappear rather than be found. That he learned how to live without records. Without connections. Others believe something broke. That the constant awareness finally consumed him. That he withdrew so completely he could no longer return. There was no moment anyone could point to. No final phone call. No goodbye. Just a gradual erasure. As if he had slowly learned how to become invisible. What makes this story unsettling is not what happened to him. It is what never happened. There was no diagnosis. No confirmation. No moment where someone said, "This is where reality ended." Everything he experienced could be explained. Coincidences exist. People cross paths. Cars appear on multiple streets. Technology glitches. Conversations stop for innocent reasons. Every single moment, taken alone, was harmless. But taken together, they formed a life shaped by fear. A fear that felt logical from the inside. That is the danger. Because his belief did not arrive as delusion. It arrived as caution. As awareness. As the sense that something was wrong, even if it could not be proven. No one ever found evidence that he was being watched. No one ever proved that he was not. The police found nothing. Doctors were never involved. Friends were left with memories that made sense only in hindsight. Some believe he is still alive. Living quietly. Carefully. Watching his surroundings. Others believe his mind never recovered. That he did not disappear. He retreated. There is no record of where he went. And no record of when. Only a series of normal moments